Hello, Cofnod Conference. I'm Gary Hedges from World Museum in Liverpool. Thank you, Richard, for inviting me to speak. Sorry I've not made it in person, but I hope this recording gives you a flavour of what the Tanyptera Project is and does. The Tanyptera Project was set up to promote the study and conservation of insects and other invertebrates in the Lancashire and Cheshire region of northwest England. It originally had a 5-year lifespan starting in 2017, which was then extended to 7.5 years until October 2024. It is funded by Tanyptera Trust and guided by a steering group of entomologists, including Phil Brighton, patron of the Tanyptera Trust, Steve Judd, Ian Wallace, and Steve Garland. Myself and Leanna Dixon are employed by National Museum of Liverpool to work on the project, and we reside in the entomology department at World Museum. The project has a big focus on improving understanding through recording, which of course lends itself to better invertebrate conservation decisions and awareness. A big part of that is by facilitating invertebrate recorders. So what do we offer recorders? We loan books and microscopes. We have heavily invested in upgrading facilities that recorders can use. High quality imaging equipment, microscopes, DNA barcoding equipment, hundreds of library books, even chairs. We have digitized thousands of pages of old regional journals and card indexes, as well as making new resources available such as checklists via our project website, northwestinvertebrates.org.uk. We run lots of courses. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. We have a grant scheme that supports individual recorders and groups. Our Recording Days program helps bring recorders together and facilitates access to new sites. We also work with recording groups, for example, producing an online atlas for Cheshire Moth Group. In-person workshops. We run several short courses each year, most of which focus on identification, but occasionally on curation, field techniques, and other topics. These are mostly 1 or 2 days based at World Museum, but we also use various sites across the region if there's an outdoor element. The closest of these to you, to most of you, would be Nest Gardens on the Wirral, where we ran day 1 of our solitary wasps course this year. All our courses are heavily subsidised compared to the actual cost of running them. Prices are currently £7.50 per day, and you get a regional or national expert for that, as well as lots of biscuits. Since 2017, we have ran 99 days of in-person courses, and that's including an 18-month break during the pandemic. Webinars. Early on in the pandemic, we moved to hosting free webinars, and we haven't stopped since. We've now run 55 of these, or in fact 56 by the time this recording goes out. These are again mainly on identification, including field ID and microscope ID, and they are delivered by top experts. As you might expect, we get a much wider audience, including global, but there remains a strong Northwest contingent. YouTube. So the webinar recordings go onto our YouTube channel, and this has so far amassed 80,000 views and 12,500 hours of people watching. Some of the recordings are almost as good as a field guide. This 3-part Harvestman series by Paul Richards covers the identification of every British species in 4.5 hours of tuition. These recordings are actually filling a void, as there's very little on YouTube about how to identify UK invertebrates. For example, nothing at all on identifying woodlice, stoneflies, sawflies, etc. There's more than just our webinar recordings on the YouTube channel. We also have recordings from hosting talks such as Bee Wars and Lancashire and Cheshire Entomological Society. There's also a few short clips on guides to identifying difficult spider pairings, which we commissioned Richard to do, and we hope to do more like this. Spotlight sessions. So we've had various incarnations of less formal training over the years, but currently every month on Wednesdays, they're currently almost every month on Wednesdays, but they're not always on invertebrates. They're aimed a bit more at those early on in their entomological journey, covering mainly groups that can be identified from photographs. They are free and open to anyone. So, how does all this training translate into greater expertise and more recorders and taxonomically wider recording? Well, it's a very difficult question. Certainly on iRecord, the most popular platform for invertebrate recording, there are more submissions each year on a wider range of invertebrate groups from a wider range of people, but of course it's hard to establish true cause and effect. It could be down to general migration to iRecord, an increase in online community support, more accessible literature available, all the efforts from record centres and recording schemes too. In truth, it doesn't matter how things have been moving in a positive direction, as long as they are moving in a positive direction. So in invertebrate recording days, we usually run 10 or more field meetings every year between April and September, covering a range of habitats, similar to what COFNOD does, I imagine, but I still haven't been to one of those. We particularly target private and under-recorded sites, and with a reasonable number of recorders, we can get to 400 species or more in a single day. All our recording data goes on Pantheon as well as to landowners and Natural England, and we encourage individual recorders to submit their records to iRecord as well as us. And I hope this short Instagram video gives you an idea of what a recording day looks like. So just a couple of recording day highlights. On the left there is Periope hohameri, which was recorded for the first time in Britain in 2019 at Altcar Training Camp on the Sefton Coast by Tony Hunter, and there have been no records since. Its ecology is virtually unknown, but it probably parasitizes micromoth larvae, since that's what its closest relatives do. And then one of my own highlights from this year, this minute mud-loving beetle, that's the actual family name, Georissis frenulatus, had me stumped because it was encrusted in sand and dried mud, which apparently they usually are. It lives at the edge of wetlands and is very local in the UK, and there are very few records from the Northwest. Publications, supporting new publications. We also support recorders and recording groups with their publication aspirations. We're currently working with authors Steve Palmer and Ben Smart to publish a new counting moth book, which covers all Lancashire species. That's over 1,500, and the book will be something like 670 pages long, and it's due out in next spring, and you'll soon be able to order your copy. So, the other major part of the project is promoting invertebrate research and conservation, or there is some overlap. We do this through a range of activities, including commissioning surveys, which seek to improve our understanding of threatened species in the region, as well as surveys of assemblages, specific habitats, and single species. So a bit about threatened species surveys. At the start of the project, we identified over 40 invertebrate species in northwest England that are threatened nationally. We did this using national status reviews by Natural England, including the Spider Review by National Resources Wales, and data collated from various sources, including a large amount from local record centres, originally recorded by people like yourselves. So we're very grateful for that. I'm going to give you a brief example of a survey we commissioned, but we have done many of these. This is Lathrobium rufous hen, a very relatively small road beetle associated with wet habitats, specifically sphagnum beds and wet reed litter. In February 2022, the beetle was given a nationally rare and vulnerable status. And historically, there have been a lot of misidentifications, and it's actually less widespread than this map suggests. It's really restricted to Cheshire, Norfolk, and County Mayo, where it was found for the first time in Ireland in 2003. The habitat at Winbury, this is just to give you an idea of the type of situation where the beetle has been historically found. Basically, the wettest Sphinmore box. So the beetle was last found at Winbury Moss in South Cheshire in 2003, the same year as County Mayo, but it was having much longer since it was last found at any other Cheshire sites. The most recent record in the Delamere Abbots Moss area had been 1981 at Flaxmere, where there had been more recent searches, but it's thought to be too dry now and it's probably extinct from there. But although it hadn't been seen in Cheshire for 20 years, Pete did find it. Here it is. These clips are probably the only footage in the world of this species. There's more footage of snow leopards. How did Pete find the beetle? Well, I'm going to let Pete explain that. So here we go.
This gives an idea of the type of habitat that is here. So the open water at the back of the picture, and then some pools, very wet pools surrounded by sphagnum. The edge of the habitat here, which is quite rushy with small willow bushes, and then off to this side, as it becomes drier, there are some seasonally wet pools by the looks of it, indicated by these open areas here with various algal mats. And the method is to walk backwards into the habitat, taking great care, and as soon as you step in, your footprints are quickly inundated with water, and as you're walking through, various insects and other invertebrates, including spiders, will float to the top, and it's hoped that within these will be the target species, Lathrobium rufipen. I'm just searching about now because I did spot one earlier, and here we are. I'll just try and zoom in on this. It's in there somewhere. Here we are. Let me see. There we go. Right in the middle there. So the method that I've been using is to locate the beetles, and then using an old tea strainer is to scoop them up. Just like that. There we are, Lathrobium rufipene at Black Lake in Delamere Forest.
So results, Pete found the beetle at 2 sites in the Abbots Moss area, the yellow markers. These are the first records here since 1909, including finding it later in the year than other records. The red markers show where he looked, but didn't find it, so it's by no means in every bog. Pete also recorded the beetle for the first time within Delamere Forest itself. And he never got to a site where he found just one. It was either a few to several or nothing. Having said that, when I went out with him, where he'd found a few, I found none. So maybe it's just me. We hope this survey will lead to greater awareness of this threatened beetle, including going into management plans, and a better appreciation of the importance of the remaining very wet bits of these very special bogs, where various other threatened invertebrates also hang on. So a quick example now of an assemblage survey we've been carrying out. Last year and this year, we've been studying the deadwood invertebrate fauna at Cumbermere Park, an old estate in South Cheshire with 800 years of history. You can see our vane traps there hanging off the trees. We had 12 of those set up between April and October 2022. We had to change the bottles on the traps every 3 weeks, sort all the samples in groups, send them off to the relevant expert for identification. That oak tree at the top has an 8.7 meter girth. It's one of the biggest I've ever seen. It's probably over 600 years old. The site was completely unstudied previously, but our results are comparable to two quite famous local sites, Tatton Park in North Cheshire and Dun and Massey in Greater Manchester. The latter has a SSSI designation for its invertebrates that rely on dead wood. The beetle there, Papilio mollis, was one of several new county records. It is a predator of bark beetles. These surveys also record a wider range of invertebrates than just those that rely on the dead wood through incidental falling into the traps. This spider is only found on very old trees with deep fissures, and it hadn't been recorded in the UK for a decade. Finding it at Cumbermere also fills a gap in its known distribution. As I've already mentioned, we run a grant scheme mainly for recorders. It's pretty similar to COFNODS, I think, if that's still running. Check out our website for more details, but I wanted to mention what remains the biggest highlight, I think, from the grant scheme, which was from a grant that paid for Richard Birkmar's vacuum sampler as part of his Lancashire Mosses spider recording project. And it was finding this jumping spider, Sibianor lare, which was recognised for the first time in Britain. Both Richard Birkmar and Richard Gannon sucked it up at Holcroft Moss. This species appears to be restricted to northern Britain, where it's associated with lowland raised bog. It seems to favour uncut bog surface. Following on from that, World Museum specimens from the 1940s were re-identified and show two historic sites for this species have been lost to agriculture, Kirkby Moss and Barton Moss in Merseyside. This demonstrates the importance of museum specimens, which you can always come back to when you have new information. This spider hadn't yet been described when it was collected in the first half of the 20th century. Okay, almost finished, but I wanted to share another little project we've been working on as relevant to local record centres and recorders alike. We knew there was a large number of unverified records on Northwest local record centre databases, which couldn't be used for any purpose or published on NBN Atlas. There are various reasons for this, including the lack of expertise locally to verify them and a lack of resources to coordinate all the necessary verification. So we offered to take on the task. We asked 21 experts to verify over 200,000 records, and they did it with little fuss. The local record centres agreed to make all the data freely available at full resolution on NBN Atlas. So far, Greater Manchester Ecology Unit, which is named for their record centre, have done this, and the rest are making strides to follow suit. We're very grateful to all the verifiers for all their hard work and to the local record centres for agreeing to it all, sending us the data, implementing the verifications, and in due course, getting it all out there. Finally, get involved in the Tanyptera Project. We have a website, a newsletter, social media, and all that stuff. There's far too many people and organisations to thank for being involved and helping with the project. We're extremely grateful to the Tanyptera Trust for funding the whole thing, and in particular Phil and the steering group and the fantastic Leanna Dixon, my colleague on the project. Thank you very much for listening. If you are still listening, I don't know. And I hope to do something in person next time. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.